Let's talk today about the betrayal wound of the fearful avoidant in a different light than what you may expect. Leslie Wells, Connection Coach. I help individuals heal, thrive, improve, repair, and really connect by looking at things through an attachment lens. And so really understanding your attachment style, your partner's attachment style, and then being able to improve the relationship by earning secure attachment and showing up securely as your best secure self in your relationship. So when we talk about the betrayal wound from the fearful avoidant, we're not necessarily meaning that they're constantly looking or worried about somebody cheating on them. What happens with the childhood of a fearful avoidant and how they become a fearful avoidant instead of becoming securely attached is that in their childhood, there usually is a degree of trauma. And so with this trauma, the parent is not able or parents are not able to show up well for the fearful avoidant. So they very quickly get the messages that love and relationships are unsafe, that they cannot trust people, they cannot count on people, people are going to continuously miss the mark and show up in ways that are unsafe for them. And sometimes this may be regularly and sometimes it may be off and on. So a lot of times there could be someone in the house that maybe has some mental health issues, that maybe has a substance abuse problem, maybe there's a lot of extreme fighting or a hard divorce, or there's a parent who is very unpredictable and very overreactive. So they are very reactive. So they get this sense that people just can't be counted on and they cannot show up in ways that feel good to them and feel safe to them. And what happens as a child is when you realize that your parents are the people that you're supposed to count on to be able to show up well for you, for your emotional, mental, and your physical needs, and they're not able to do that, there's this betrayal wound that starts to form where inherently the child begins to say, okay, well, if the parents can't do this for me, like that's a betrayal. They're failing me here. I'm supposed to be able to count on them to do these things for me, and they can't, and that's not okay. That's how that betrayal wound forms. And with that is the thought that if these people are unsafe, the people I'm supposed to depend on for my very life and essence and everything I need, then everybody else is unsafe. So they take that blueprint and they move that forward into their adult relationships, and it really, really shows up later in life. So essentially, most of the caregivers and most of the parents of a fearful avoidant are very unpredictable. And that's why the child cannot count on them consistently to show up well for them. They're unpredictable. They're going to do things that are going to let them down, miss the mark. They're not going to read them the right way. And so one of the really big ways that this betrayal wound will sort of play out in marriage or a long-term committed relationship is around unpredictability. So because they come from trauma, fearful avoidants also have extreme hypervigilance. So they make sure that they're constantly paying attention to someone's voice, tone, changes in schedule, how their body language changes, any mannerisms that are different, any facial expressions. They pay attention to everything, and they're constantly collecting data on people to know whether or not they feel safe in that moment. And that's subconscious because they really subconsciously, it's sort of this, if I can't be aware of the bad thing coming, then I'm okay once it comes. I can prepare myself for the bad thing coming. Newsflash, you can never prepare yourself enough for the bad thing. What you can do is earn secure attachment so that when the bad thing comes, you're capable and competent and you know you're going to be able to pull yourself out of the mud and move on and be okay. This hypervigilance keeps the fearful avoidant safe. So let's say that they had a parent who maybe was an alcoholic. If that parent came home and they slammed the door behind them and they could hear them stumbling or they could hear them grumbling and griping, then they may know and look for those things to go upstairs and stay away and not interact with the parent at that time. If the parent came home and maybe they'd been drinking, but they sounded joyful and they were singing a song and they could tell a difference, then they would be like, okay, mom or dad is going to be fun today and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to get my needs met. So very much they learn how to pay attention to every detail of a person to know whether or not things were safe or to know when things were starting to become unsafe. Maybe it's a parent that had been sober for a little bit, but they're looking for cues that they're going to fall off the wagon, little things that take place before. I'm a former fearful avoidant that was leaning anxious, and I used to work with addicts at one point in time, and I am extremely, extremely hypervigilant. I can tell you usually when someone's going to do something before they even know where they've even started that downward spiral. So this is something that is both a blessing and a curse. And it doesn't usually go away for the fearful avoidant. We can challenge it, we can learn how to deal with it, but it's typically something that really kind of sticks. So this betrayal wound comes out in relationships really centered around unpredictability. So if you are with a fearful avoidant or you are a fearful avoidant, some of the things that will really send them are not having your words and actions align, or being unpredictable, like being one way sometimes and then switching it. So another thing that will send a fearful avoidant is if you change your mind. Like if you really stand firm by something that you say you believe in or that you agree with, and then all of a sudden you change your mind, which is okay. That black and white thinking is very characteristic of insecure attachment. People who are securely attached are able to hold two truths at a time, and they don't think so black and white. They can see different perspectives. But for a fearful avoidant, that cues them to on safety, because if you have your mind set against something and you have this belief system and then you change it, then they begin to not trust you. Because remember, one of the things for the fearful avoidant is they really struggle to trust anyone, because they've constantly getting messages that love is unsafe and people are unsafe and they're not trustworthy, and they can't trust them to show up in ways that feel good for them and honor them. And this can show up in little things where people who are more securely attached would offer a lot more grace. Like if you are home late, if you've changed your mind about something, if you bail out on an activity that you're going to do with them, if you say you're going to do one thing and then you end up not doing it because maybe you're tired or you had a bad day. But those words and actions not aligning are really a big deal for the fearful avoidant, where other people may give a little bit more grace and have a little more understanding. Because yes, over time, if consistently your words and actions do not align and you're consistently and frequently changing your mind about big belief things, there's a problem with that, right? That does show that you're not very predictable and that you can't necessarily be counted on, and that you do maybe a little flighty and sort of easily be persuaded or easily influenced, and maybe struggling with figuring out a little bit of your identity. But for someone who does this here and there, that's normal. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all do different things when sometimes we think we're going to do something and then we change our mind. But for a fearful avoidant, this can really send them and get them into some of those protest behaviors where they can really get upset and really come at you. So the betrayal wound for the fearful avoidant is not necessarily centered around they're always looking for somebody to cheat on them. Now, if that has been part of their past and that is something they've experienced and maybe in their family, then that definitely can be one of their things. But typically that betrayal wound is more centered around looking for people to not show up in ways that feel good for them, or looking for people to do things that are going to hurt them in some way. And that really can just mean like emotionally abandoning them, dropping them ball for them emotionally, not taking the time to see, hear, understand them, or showing up with unpredictability, which naturally feels unsafe. And again, one of the things that can be challenging, or one of the things that we need to also learn, is that when we earn secure attachment, and this is extremely important for the fearful avoidant, when they actually earn secure attachment, they learn to have a better sense of trust in themselves. Because sometimes when your nervous system is a wreck, and sometimes when you find yourself being hypervigilant all the time and constantly having to challenge whether or not somebody did something intentionally, whether or not they're going to hurt you, whether or not they're doing this on purpose, whether or not they really are unpredictable, sometimes that is true, and we are in unsafe relationships. And the fearful avoidant especially will go into unsafe relationships with narcissists, or people who have substance abuse problems, or people who are extreme avoidance. And so sometimes there is some validity that we have to check whenever someone is unpredictable. The problem with being insecurely attached and being a full-on fearful avoidant is whenever people are unpredictable and they're just being human, we aren't able to see the difference between what's normal, what's okay, what's acceptable, and when we're still safe versus when somebody truly isn't unsafe, because our nervous system constantly has somebody feeling unsafe when you're a fearful avoidant. So it's really hard to get to a place of actually trusting in yourself. And one of the great things about being securely attached is you get to this place where you can actually use some of those great things like that discernment to be able to serve you, rather than to be able to cause you so much pain and create so many painful stories that are actually not untrue. And you really are able to see when you should be concerned about someone being unpredictable and when you shouldn't be. If you are interested in getting that sense of trust within yourself, of healing your insecure attachment and getting to a place where you can be securely attached, then reach out to me. I do one-on-one coaching, and I would love to work with you.